Sierra Bender, the founder of the Four Body Fit Institute and also the author of Goddess of the Core. And I am here with Sharon Fedeke.
Or Fekete. And nobody can say my name.
I've been saying it wrong the whole time.
You
haven't even told
9,000 other people.
Oh.
Yeah, Fekete. It's the hardest name in the world.
For feck's sake.
That's why in Ireland it's a perfect name. Feck off, for feck's sake.
Fedeke.
Fedeke.
Fedeke, okay.
I don't actually think I've ever heard you say my last name.
I've been saying it wrong the whole time.
Doesn't matter, I never heard it.
I'm embarrassed.
To other people. Bender, you can't really screw up. Fekete?
Fekete. Okay.
Blame my husband for that one.
It's how much. I can't even say it right.
Nobody can.
Fedeke.
Fekete.
Fekete.
Yeah.
Oh
it's a
my
tough one.
Lord. I'm going to have to remember FUC. Well, we're both
Fekete.
from New York, so
Right.
like that F.
You just gotta think.
Fedeke.
Feck off.
Fucky. Fuckaki.
Fuckity.
Fedeke. Okay, so. Anyway, The Broken Road to Mental Health.
Exactly. It's a funny book. It's a comedy.
We're a little screwy here. In life and in business. So I know personally I've worked with you and you've done wonders for me. So thank you. And you've introduced me to so many beautiful people because I was new to St. Pete. And also New York girl, Jersey girl, New York girl. We just have the same attitude, the same lingo. I don't have this kind of free time. Let's move on.
Let's do it.
So I read this beautiful book. I remember we were sitting in the Vinoy and you were telling me part of your story. And I was like, whoa.
It was a long time ago, too. A few years ago.
When I first met you.
Yeah.
We were just talking.
Yeah, it was like the first time we were talking. I just.
Yeah.
Bleh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, well.
She has that aura about her.
One empathetic person to
Yes.
another empathetic, you know it, and it's like you respect each other's story. And then also the connection to spirit. You know, you couldn't have gone through this without having a connection to somehow, some way, spirit. And so, I'm going to kind of break this down into like how you went through this. So you first start off telling the story about my father. Let me say this. My father always used to tell me when I was little, growing up, he said, you never see a good kid turn a bad kid good. You always see a bad kid turn a good kid bad.
True. And
when I read this about how you felt insecure in this person as a child and like really planted, as I call it, the itty bitty shitty committee in your brain, that this insecurity and then how it just grew and took over and like how it just got seated in your heart and then how it started to get larger with your insecurities and things that were happening, and although you had a wonderful, beautiful family and supportive, it was like, wow, it could happen to the best of us.
Yeah, to anybody.
And, you know, and how you went through that process of not feeling worthy. And even though you had all this love around you, there was something that you just couldn't get over. And it was like self-inflicting pain. Like, why did you not feel worthy? And then the ways you punished yourself. And the characters that were in your life.
Ooh, there were some characters in
that fed that belief system.
The aliases.
The aliases. The Bend. the
Bear.
The Bear and
Spokane.
Yeah. Yeah. But then how you literally thought that you deserved it. And how it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then not feeling created when you finally started to feel. From in your story I was reading, and that's when the depression hit. When you were able to feel.
Yeah, when all the drugs and the alcohol was gone.
Right.
That's when it hit. When there's nothing else to turn to. When it's just your thoughts.
Right. So you have to be with yourself.
Yeah.
You have to be silent and still, which are learned activities.
Yeah. Not what I wanted to do at that time.
Right.
I wanted to be anywhere except in my head, but I had to if I was going to get sober, if I was going to make it. So that's when depression came along. So anytime I tried to get sober, depression followed each time. So what was I to do? Well, stay high. Why would I
want to feel?
Why would I want to feel any of that?
Why would I want to be present?
Exactly.
So this was your hell.
Yes.
As they say.
That was my hell.
That was your hell. In the deepest, darkest parts of your soul. And the itty bitty shitty committee just kept getting larger and larger and larger.
It was a big committee.
Yeah.
It was a boardroom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I wasn't in charge. The voices in my head were, yeah. It's a tough place to be in a depression. There's a big difference between being depressed and being sad, and being like, I'm depressed because I broke up with someone. You know, it's a really big difference when you are in a hole and you cannot get out of it. You feel like you're never going to get out of it, so time doesn't even matter. Because you can't even plan anything because you're always thinking that you're not going to be there. You're going to be dead. Why would I plan anything? When people used to tell me, like, I'll see you at the wedding, I'm thinking to myself, as soon as somebody says that, well, I won't be there.
Right.
So that's, so depression is a horrific mental illness that comes from trauma.
Right.
Not for, who am I to say that that's exactly what it is? But I have been reading this book recently that I'm going to end up telling everybody about. And of course, I can't remember the name of it. And he was this guy who went through depression too. He was never asked, what happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
It's always, what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
And the better question is, what happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
Remember Oprah did that on 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
I told you about that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
that's right. I knew you'd get that. But what a powerful question to ask somebody, because that is what they're like, well, what is wrong with you? Why are you depressed? Or why are you addicted? But this guy breaks it down where he was on antidepressants for 13 years. Mm-hmm. And, the doctor said, which was the same thing that was said to me, was that I had a chemical imbalance. Mm-hmm. And I was happy to hear that. I'm having these different thoughts about it now. So it's why I've been getting silent, going on my little spiritual retreats. Because I think, when you're told that your brain is broken, which is basically what I was told, there's something wrong with your brain, we're going to give you this drug, and then you're going to be back into health. But it wasn't just...
No, it causes another problem.
Well, for me, I was lucky, right?
Yeah.
And I said it in the book, I don't think it's the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never want to dictate what works for anybody else. But for me, it was more about, I had love in my life, and I had a connection to spirit, mm-hmm. and I had my 12-step program, mm-hmm. so I had community, and I had 20 milligrams of Prozac for 6 months, and then I was okay, and then I never took them again.
Right.
But that's what happened to me. That's not what happens to everybody else.
Right.
So I think it's I think I can't wait for you all to read this book that I just read, because it's better than mine. I'm happy to admit that. Because this guy went around the world to all of these scientists and, really having this conversation about well, if we tell somebody that they have a chemical imbalance, which I've been saying that story forever.
Sure.
I've been saying it for 25 years. And it made me feel good, but now I'm looking at it differently. Well, I didn't, because I didn't stay on the drugs. Mm-hmm. I got better because of all of that was around me, that I had a place to go, that I had people that identified with me. I had a community. Right. I had love. I had support. And I had a design for living. And I don't think many people get that.
Right.
And that's what I was just talking about with that hospital administrator today. About that, mental health communities.
Mental health communities.
Yeah. We need something.
Right.
Like this, For Body Fit Institute.
Well, that's what this came about.
Right.
We're not going deep enough.
That's right.
And it has to go down to the DNA.
Yeah.
And a thought, as we know, turns into matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we keep feeding that itty bitty shitty committee,
mm-hmm.
and it starts to create our reality, but where did that first seed come from? Where was it planted? And that's what this is, the 4 Body Fit method, as you know. What I do in the clinical research of that was, from my experience also was, where did I first disconnect from spirit? Why am I not silent and still? Why don't I want to be in my body? Mm-hmm. What happened to me where I disconnected? Mm-hmm. Why did I disconnect? Why did I stop listening? And then mentally, what were the belief systems that took me further away from this, from from society, religion, your culture. And then emotionally, why do I continually punish myself with drugs, alcohol, bad relationships? And then physically, why do I consistently resist this love? Why do I keep picking the same actors and actresses in my life that tell me I'm not worthy? So I was laughing, I'm like, oh my God, what a reflection, going through this is like, whoa.
That's my boyfriend had a girlfriend chapter. When I had to get quiet and not blame anybody else anymore.
Where the pain kept getting worse, stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's like, that just goes to show how strong you are too. But then also the resilience of then just flipping that over and turning your pain into power. And it's like, what makes a person able to heal and not heal? Right. Why can some people do it? And then why some people are having such a hard time? And for you, for me, it was always going back to from is the spiritual connection that you found, that starting off with the spiritual body first and working down to the physical, and then how it started to manifest for you physically about your work and then your husband and about all the things that you started to attract. Like, as they say, the law of attraction. But it first came from that. I surrender. I'm not in control. The ego always wanted control with the drugs and the alcohol and just keep the self-inflicting pain.
And I surrender looks like this, not like this.
I open to. May my eyes, ears, and heart be open to receive you. How can I be of best service to spirit today? When I'm of service to spirit, I'm of service to myself.
That's true.
And this is of service. Yeah. So telling your story, being brave enough to tell the story is being of service, because your words affect people. Consciousness of, even reading this and identifying yourself. I can identify with that. Everyone can identify with something in this book, right? Because they identify, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not losing it. If she's, they're only seeing the outcome of the work being done.
Right.
So people sometimes don't want to look deep enough to go, well, how did she do that? Well, it's a lot of work.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of discipline.
It's
a lot of self-love.
It's a lot of self-love.
It's a lot of editing.
It's a lot of editing.
That's no longer of service. So it's funny how, you and knowing you, like, as tough as we are, it's like it just reflects in the book, the characters in your life. Like, you literally getting the shit beat out of you. You're doing it to yourself, and then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, something just shifts, and I just love how you talk about your parents and like how you were just so unconscious, like you didn't mean to hurt them, and it was just like they were there for you. But for people who don't, what about people who don't have somebody there for them? And then it just goes deeper, and even in my clinical research, we're thinking that we're getting better, and we're not. Like, as a society, that's why mental health has gotten worse, is because antidepressants have more than doubled. So people are just popping pills because they're not happy. Well, happiness is work.
Yeah, and I don't think that gets expressed enough as it should. I'm sure that we know some good doctors out there.
Right.
Thankfully. And I just had this conversation with this hospital administrator, this vice president, which I'm always thrilled to women. And, if you go to a primary care doctor, his specialty is not depression, addiction, So if you come in and you have anxiety, or if you have depression, it's a script more than likely. Yep. And hopefully a referral to somebody that can help you, because talk therapy is huge. I mean, you have to be able to talk to somebody. And I think I say it in the book, but if you don't feel a connection with somebody, you should pay attention to that, and that's, of course, my parents are thrilled the book is out, because, they get to talk about what they went through, and they did go through a lot, but, they've reminded me of all the therapists that they took me to. Polly wanted a cracker. She was a Manhattanite, on Park Avenue, and they thought if they took me to somebody, that was fancy, and, that would do it. Right. Little did I know. I wish I had have known that she was just like me at one time. She was an addict, but she didn't tell me that, so I thought she was a wackadoodle. Because I didn't want to be around somebody that was on Park Avenue or attractive. I wanted somebody on my level at that time.
Exactly.
So there were so many therapists and counselors and rehabs and mental institutions. whatever they called them at the time. But yeah, I mean, and that was 25 years ago.
Right.
So what has happened for 25 years?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was daily work every day. Like, it doesn't stop.
No.
You know, I rode my bike today. I meditated. I waited for a dolphin.
It's a muscle.
He didn't come today.
He didn't come today.
No, not today.
Okay.
But he has come many times. And it's something you have to work on every day.
Spiritual muscle first.
Yeah. So we're going to do an event. Me and you. We're going to do an event here.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. November 7th.
Next week.
Yes.
Right? God, it's November on Friday.
From 5:30 to 7.
Yes. We're going to
So
talk
it's like,
about
yeah,
mental strength
stress. Right.
with the holiday blues. Some people have a really hard time this time of year.
Oh, absolutely. I do because for me, Christmas was when I had my near-death experience, my loss. And it's funny when we talk about trauma, the body remembers, you know. And every Christmas I'd be like, why shouldn't I be happy? And it was the day that, you know, I lost a child and passed over, but it was the most beautiful time in my life because it brought me back to me, my true authentic self. Because I knew at that time, I knew at 7 I wasn't supposed to have children. And then somehow, some way, we go out of alignment because of society and what culture tells us we're having. And that's where, for me, the depression first gets seated, is I am not in alignment with my true authentic self and what my true nature is, and I'm fighting against it. And like, well, wait a minute, everything's a contradiction, and that craziness in your brain and also your heart, you have to go out of your heart in order to survive. And then all your energy's up in your head, and then you're trying to reason with something. So you've lost that connection, and that's when the ego comes from fear and doubt, and it keeps you so busy that it exhausts you. And now you're out of your body, and then that's why depression can go deeper, or addiction goes deeper, because I really don't want to hear it any longer. And people suffer from that. I truly understand that. I went through it myself. I didn't go through it to the extreme, but sometimes I felt like, God, I just want to run my car into a tree. Like, just end this. I don't want to be here. I know what it's like to be on this other side. Why in God's name did you place me here again? You know,
How did you save me?
And until I said I'm here and I better stay here in my body and start doing the work, and that's why I'm here, to be of service. And if I don't accept that, you know, you're being of service yourself. Like, so you turned your pain into power. And those who go through the most pain, and that's why I always tell people who really go through things like this, you become the best catalyst to help other people and be of service. And then that's when the pain turns into power and the suffering
It's so
subsides.
empowering. It really is. I mean, it's not, I didn't write this book for me. I wrote it for others. I wasn't ever going to, you know, become a millionaire from Amazon getting $3. Right? But I know that when I get these messages from people about how this has helped.
I love the humor. Go back and forth.
It's in the book. The humor's in there too. But when, you know, I get these messages from people, how can I not continue to give back what was so freely given to me? And I do, and I have to say this as much as possible, I would have never said anything if I wasn't 25 years into this wellness lifestyle that I'm in today. Because I think sometimes people speak too soon, you know?
Yeah, and you talk about that in here, which I really, see, look at this book. I got it all outlined, and it's like passing on dysfunction from one, meaning shut up, basically what you're saying, you don't know what you're talking about, and how do you say it at the end? I was like, it says, when you don't know something, say I don't know.
I don't know.
Stay in your own lane, right? And then passing on the dysfunction, and that's what I see too in my industry of empowerment and what have you. It's like, oh, now that I'm healed, I'm like, you just hit the surface. And now you want to empower others, but you haven't done your own work yet. And then you're actually creating more harm than you are good sometimes. And that's what you're talking about. What's the difference? You said here an expert and what's not an expert. And, you know, you can offer help, of course.
You had questions for me?
Yes. Okay, so the questions are,
yes.
What do you think mental health is lacking?
The mental health industry? Well, okay, so I'll be really candid. Because I usually like to be politically correct when it comes to the industry that I'm in, which is the medical industry. But fuck it. think the reason that I did very well with Ben, there's a whole chapter in there called Tuesdays with Ben,
Right.
is because he was
Who's your therapist?
he was my dad's EAP counselor
Right.
at the hospital, and he related to me because he was an addict. So because I knew that he knew what I went through. He could relate to me. He wasn't spewing things
Right.
that didn't feel authentic.
Right.
So that's for me, and that's what I have found for most people that connect with somebody. It's usually because there's some identification, there's some I can relate,
Right.
and it's not somebody talking at you.
Mhm.
I think because I know so much. I mean, I went to therapists, with different boyfriends through the years. Not that there was anybody before Rob, but I remember,
Of value anyway.
Right, exactly. I remember writing a check once with my ex in the therapist's office and saying, "Okay, thank you. I don't even need you because you just had to say back what I'm doing with him, and I know it's over." Like when you know a lot, and then you're faced with somebody that's giving you sometimes what I feel is like lip service. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough to find really great help in that community.
Sure.
It is because, unfortunately for me, I'm in the industry, so I know sometimes, like what I talked about in the book about people helping people that haven't helped themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's a real tough one for me. I really have a hard time with that because it happens even in my 12-step program.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't give you something I don't have because it takes work, like you said. So I hope that answers the question.
Right.
Although this is going to be another half hour.
So I also found too, going through therapy, when people ask me how do I feel, I'm like, if I knew how I felt, I wouldn't be here. It's like being mental gymnastics. So I don't know how to feel because that's how I survived through the trauma or whatever it was. So I numbed out everything, whether it's through alcohol, whether it's stay busy. You could be a workaholic, you could be a workoutaholic, you could be eating disorders, it could be cutting, it could be all the things that I work with also. It's just the way that you numbed yourself out in order to survive an uncomfortable situation, and it just keeps getting worse.
And I think it's okay for like somebody that's helping you, that's a therapist or a psychologist. I think it's okay to touch somebody. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I can literally see the snots and boogers coming out of your nose.
Right.
Let me give you a hug. I think people need more connection.
Right.
They need more empathy and kind. Like just being kind to somebody is huge. And sometimes in that therapeutic community, I can't tell you that I've suffered from anything. Well, that doesn't make you very human, in my opinion. And that's not everybody. It's certainly not you. We're talking to him, that one therapist in the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also feel like the weakness in the mental health industry is a lot of it's learned through a book and not through experience. And so when a person has gone through that experience, and as you're saying, they don't know it. I mean, you can have empathy or sympathy for it, but if you can't get in there with them, or when somebody's gone through really deep trauma, it actually brings that out in the therapist or people you're working with, and then it's like, okay, we need to stop here because it's uncomfortable, or like you said, I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because you're in a very vulnerable position when you're coming into an expert, so-called expert, and then they're taking you to a space or place that maybe is not as healthy and actually creates more harm. I've seen a ton of that.
Yeah. Well, here's a good one. In my opinion, if anybody is helping you through anything, a therapist, a life coach, whatever the heck it is, you don't need to actually be in it for that long.
Absolutely.
There needs to be a solution.
Right.
So if you're with the same person for years and years, and you're not shifting,
Yeah.
and getting better.
Then your therapist is emotional lollipop, and then the therapist itself has to say, "Oh, you're
Emotional
very
lollipop.
codependent on the
I love
client."
Yeah.
So it doesn't work because now you're back into the dysfunctional relationship of prey-predator or codependency narcissism. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so my word of wisdom is for people who are going through that
Mhm.
is that are you able to go deep enough with them? Will they allow you? And the first question is do you believe in holistic practices to help me team up with me to help me get off of meds in a healthy way, to help me get into holistic practices to put in my everyday life because it's in my body, it's in my cellular structure, it's not just up here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just keep I'm a mouse on the wheel, keep talking about it, which actually brings up more trauma and keeps you stuck.
Yes.
And I feel and know that this is where the mental health industry is going, that they're starting to figure out, and there's so many different modalities now, especially indigenous ways. You know, when I went through mine, it wasn't like, let's talk about your feelings. It's like, go climb that mountain,
Yeah.
go dig that hole, get in that ceremony, and you're going to work it out. And you're going to figure it out through prayer, through being physically exhausted, because I don't know how I feel, but if I physically exhaust myself, the emotions really do start to pop up. They start to bubble up.
Yeah, I think that they're starting to integrate. Understanding that you need some type of integration with alternative methods. I really think that it's so helpful. I think that we need to provide more solutions because talk therapy is very important, but like, where are we going? And where's your accountability in all this? I'm going to give you these things to do.
Exactly.
And if you can't do them, well, then I can't see you anymore. Because that's how people get better.
Oh,
Give them
absolutely.
accountability, right?
Right.
I would think. I mean, what do I know? What do I know? And it's, it's not fair. Like this guy that wrote this book that I'm a little obsessed about right now, even at the end of the book, which I love that he said, it's not fair for me to say, like, this worked for me, so this is what you should do.
Right.
No. You know? But we need to find solutions for people. We need to help them, and I think that community is great. Coming to a place like this where we're having connection and we have drums and we have spirit and we have music and we have, peace and talk about like really in-depth stuff. For me, it's like my whole 25 years has been like, hey, what fucked you up? Like right away. Like, let's not do this whole like, how's the weather? Let's have a real conversation.
Right.
Why are you this way, doctor? Why do you yell at your staff? What's going on? You okay? Anything going on at home you want to talk about? What's going on here?
Well, as a leader, too, they need emotional support, and being a leader, I get it. I get it from both perspectives, but you can't be... Doctors are doctors. They're there to heal, or people are there to heal. They're not there to lead a business. That's where you come in, right? And you help them, because you can't do both. It's like, even doing this business myself, and you're doing this business, it's like, you can't wear all the hats. You have to pick the lane of what you want to invest your energy in, what you're good at.
That's right.
And then get the support around you to hold those things that you're not as credible at.
You have to read The Awakened Woman.
What's that?
I don't know her name. I don't know anybody's name. Some doctor, she's amazing. Sacred Dreams. So I thought of you a lot, but this book is amazing. The Awakened Woman. And she talks about if you really want to figure out what you should be doing with your life, figure out what breaks your heart. And whatever breaks your heart is what you should be working towards helping. So whether that be helping others or like you've been doing with helping people out of their trauma because it touched a place in your life.
Oh, yeah.
That's...
People always ask me, how did you start your business? I was pissed off. Like, what? Like, that's one of my measurements, righteous anger. I was pissed off about how women were being used and abused in all the industries were keeping us held down. And I was like, wait a second, I'm part of the problem instead of the solution, being a personal trainer, only coming from beauty on the outside. And then when my experience happened, it was like, whoa, okay, now I'm looking at it from another perspective. And then I saw how many other women were suffering. And okay, you're not crazy, let's help you make sense of some of this, what you're conditioned to do and why. And that's the trauma part. And And then once you release yourself from the conditioning, then that's when the freedom comes, the heart opens. I want to be present. I want to, I say, if the container is not healthy, spirit cannot stay and do its work.
It's true.
And it's hard to be in the container because that means you have to feel. If I have to feel, then I have to deal with my shit. If I have to deal with my shit, then I got to make choices. If I have to make choices, then that means I have to be responsible. And there's the anxiety.
You're gonna grow? You're gonna grow?
And there's the anxiety, right? And then we're not given those tools.
Yeah.
So these are tools. These are stories that, what you've done, what I've done, help people to relate to. You're not crazy.
Right, and it's not because she's from New York.
That you're from New York?
Yeah,
You're crazy?
People go, she's from New York, she's a little straightforward,
Well, that's because we're brought up. We don't have this kind of free time. And F is used as a comma. It's like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. It's
right,
like
but I don't think it's just
editing.
about being from New York. It's because I'm strong, because I'm confident, because I can be direct with you and I can tell you the truth.
Well, that's the street
Right?
smarts, too, that you've learned.
That's in the
the
book.
street smarts. You learn street smarts of prey predator. You learn human behavior. You learn how to survive.
Got my eye on them.
Yeah.
Sierra, we have to wrap it up.
I know, we're sitting here
We'll be
talking
here for
forever.
2 hours.
I know,
We'll
bye.
see you November 7th, 5:30 p.m.
That's a
We'll have
Thursday
like
night.
coffee and water and nothing that'll, make her liable for you being stupid when you leave.
Bye.